Hello and welcome to this video tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to repair burnt out skies with layers. So here we have our original image, and as you can see the left hand side of the picture has been burnt out due to the sun just being off frame when the picture was taken. But if we take a look over the right hand side, we can see that we've got some quite nice dark blues, and we're just going to enhance these, then use samples from the sky on the right hand side to rebuild the burnt out areas over on the left. So by the time that we've finished, we'll have rebuilt the sky, added a few new clouds, and we'll also enhance the colour and tone of the foreground. So we'll end up with a final image that looks just like this. So we'll get straight into it, and I'll just close down the after image. And the first thing that we want to do is just to select the sky area. So if we just choose the quick selection tool, and you'll find that over on the tool palette on the left, and the keyboard shortcut for that is just A. Once selected, just left click your mouse button, drag the cursor all the way across the sky and just down into the cloud area down here. With that done, we want to just refine the edge, so we're going to smooth the selected area in with the unselected area. So if we just click refine edge up in the top tool options, and what we want to do is just make sure that we've got our smooth at 0. We want to feather the edge between the sky and the hill here, just a touch, so we'll put that at 2 pixels. And we're also going to use contract expand and just expand our selection by +3. Now, so that we can just check that our selection has everything that we want, I'm just going to click onto the red mask, which just shows a little bit more visually the area that we've got selected. And there we can see the sky area is in our selection, and anywhere covered with red is out of our selection. So we don't have to be too accurate there. You can see a few bits missing from the trees, but we don't have to worry too much about that for this particular project. So now we've made our selection, just click OK to apply that. And what we want to do as our first step is to just darken down the colour detail within the sky. And we can do that using a levels adjustment layer. If we go down to our new adjustment layers, just left click once and we'll select levels. And we'll see the new levels layer appear, and we can see that our selection has been made into a mask just there on the right. What this means is any adjustments that we make with our levels will only apply to the sky area, and the foreground area will be unaffected. So we're just going to increase the shadows, and that should darken down the colour within the sky. So if we grab hold of the shadow slider, and we're just going to increase that up to about 50. Now, if we take a look at before and after, by just toggling the visibility of that layer on and off, we can just see quite a light blue sky. And there, after our levels adjustment, we've got really nice dark tones. Now, what we want to do is to take colour samples from the darkest area and also from the lightest area of the sky so that we can create an overlaid gradient. So, first thing we need to do is just create a new layer. Then, if we go over to our eyedropper tool, shortcut for that is just I. And we're just going to take our first sample up here in the darkest area of blue. So just left click once and you'll see that colour now appear in the colour swatch down at the bottom. Now if I just click the double-ended arrow once, and that'll flip foreground and background colours. And again with the eyedropper tool, we're just going to select a lighter blue down here, just sort of in between the clouds. So we've now got our foreground and our background colours. And now we're ready to create our overlaid gradient. Before we go straight in and apply the gradient though, we just need to remake our selection. And the quickest and easiest way to do this is just hold down Control on your keyboard, go over to your layers palette and just left click into the levels 1 layer mask, and you'll instantly see those running ants reappear. So now that I've remade the selection, just want to make sure that I've got the gradient tool selected, and the shortcut for that is just G. At the top, I just want to check that I've got my foreground to background preset selected, just click OK to that, and that I've got the linear gradient selected as well from the options at the top. Now that I've got everything prepared to draw my gradient, just going to hold down Shift, move the cursor down to the bottom of the sky, left click and hold the mouse button, and then draw vertically right to the top of the image, and then release the left mouse button, and we'll now have our new gradient sky. And as you see, it's not looking that realistic, but we're going to start to use a few more layers and adjustments just to blend that in with the original and to rebuild our sky layer. So to start our selection, I'm just going to create a new levels adjustment layer. So again, back to the new adjustment layer icon, down to levels, and we've now got our new levels layer appear just above our sky layer. Just left click that, drag that in between the layer 1 and the levels 1 layer and release, and you'll see it just appear below layer 1. Now hold down Alt on the keyboard, just hover the mouse in between the two layers and you'll see the cursor changing, and as I click, that'll clip the levels 2 layer to the layer 1. Now I'm ready to start blending in those two layers. Just going to make sure I've got the layer mask of levels 2 selected. Just going to reset my colour swatches by just clicking the two very small colour swatch icons down at the bottom, or just hitting D on the keyboard. And then if I hit X, that'll just flip those colour swatches round, so I've now got black as my foreground colour. With colour swatches prepared, I'm now going to select the brush. If I just click on the brush preview, and I'm just going to select 300 to start off with as the preset size. And as you can see, that's quite small, so I'm just going to increase that a little further to about 700. My mode is normal, and I'm also just going to reduce the opacity of the brush down to about 20. So now that I've got that selected, the first thing I want to do is just to start to reveal some of that cloud detail in the background. So what I'm doing is just very gently painting over the sky where the original clouds were, and just bringing those back through. Remember, there's a little bit of cloud just up here as well. Just switch off those 3 layers, just check where the clouds are, switch them back on, make sure I've got that selected. There we go, we've got our original clouds back through. But if we have a look at the original image, we can already see the sky is looking an awful lot better. But it's still looking a little bit unnatural over here on the left-hand side. So to get a more natural sky effect, what we're going to do is utilise the clouds that are already in existence within the image and start to paste those elsewhere within the picture. But before we do that, we will need to flatten down all of our layers so far into one new layer. So I click onto my top sky layer, hold down Shift, click on the background image, and then holding down Shift, Control, Alt, and then E. That'll basically take all of the layers within our that were selected and create our new layer at the top. So we're now ready to get started with creating those new clouds. So we're going to start off small, and the first thing we're going to do is just select the standard lasso tool. So just click on lasso, click and hold with the left mouse button, and make sure you've got the top option selected. And we're just going to steal this cloud just here. So I'm just going to very quickly draw around that with the cursor, then go Control C, Control V, and that'll paste our cloud into a new layer. Then select the move tool, just V on your keyboard, and we're just going to move that up here and into position. Now, as you see at the moment, it's not blending in very well, so we now need to look at blending in that new cloud with the new sky. So the first thing we can do is just use levels to adjust the colour and tone of the blue so that it better matches that background. So if we just go Control L, which is shortcut for opening up levels, and we want to just increase the shadows up to about 40. And as we do that, you can just see that blue really disappearing and matching the background, and that's quite a nice match. So just click OK to apply that levels adjustment to the cloud layer. Now, as before, we're going to use another levels adjustment layer. I'm going to use its mask just to complete the blend. So if we click on the new adjustment layer, down to levels, and we'll see the levels layer appear here at the top of the layers palette. Left click and drag that below layer 3. Hold down Alt, and once again just clip the levels layer to the image layer, just by clicking in between the 2 layers when the cursor changes. Then make sure we've got our levels layer mask selected. Again, that we've got black set as our foreground. Select the brush. We're just going to reduce the size by using this left square bracket tool, and so that we can get a better view of what we're actually adjusting, just go Control Plus to zoom into the image. Now just hold down spacebar, left click and drag just to move to our cloud, and again we're using an opacity of 20%, and we can just start to work around the edge of the cloud just to blend that in. So that'll take a couple of minutes to do, but as you see the blend is pretty good. Just move it over a little bit and we zoom back out, and we can really see how that's quite nicely just blended in that new cloud with the rest of the sky. And you can't really tell that it wasn't there originally anyway. So now we've done that, we can start to have a look at some of the larger clouds. So if we click back onto layer 2, which was our flattened layer, again select the lasso tool, and this time we're just going to take this large selection of clouds, just taking in a little bit of the foreground there as well. And just make a nice selection of those clouds. And again, just go Control C, Control V, and we'll paste that into another new layer. So now select the move tool. I'm also just going to make sure I've got auto select layer switched off, otherwise it will start selecting other masks and layers within the image. I'm just going to move that over to the left hand side of the screen. Now, so that we've got a cloud that looks slightly different to the original, I also want to flip that layer over. So if I go up to image, down to rotate and flip horizontal, and then just move that right into position. So just make sure it's roughly aligned. And now I'm just going to adjust the size of the clouds just a little bit. So if I just hover over the top right anchor point, just grab hold of that. I'm just going to increase the size of those clouds, move it back into position, and then just click the green commit button to apply that change. So we've now got our sky into position, and as with the small sky again, just to help with the blend, I'm just going to open up levels, which is Control L. Just going to increase those midtones to 0.85, which has just helped with the blend of those clouds. Just click OK, and now if I zoom in, I can see that the match between the new clouds and the gradient sky is already almost perfect. Now, as with the smaller cloud layer, just going to create a new adjustment layer. Select levels, drag that below layer 4, hold down Alt and click in between the 2 layers to clip. Then, making sure I've got the black brush selected, black as my foreground, I could then very quickly just blend in and get that new cloud layer blending in with the new gradient sky. And as you can see, that really takes no time at all. We have to obviously blend in the new cloud layer with the original foreground. So to do this, I'm just going to click on layer 4, reduce the opacity to 70% so we can see the new and the old. Click back onto my levels layer mask, and then I'm just going to use that brush where you can see the join just to blend it in. If I zoom right into about 100%, I then use the square bracket tools, left for making the brush smaller, right for making it larger, and then I can just perfect that blend and get quite a nice natural mix between those two layers. So this takes just a little bit of time. Once we finish that, we'll just zoom back out to fit screen, click back onto our layer 4 and just increase our opacity back to 100. And as you can see, that looks pretty natural. That's our repaired sky done. Now all we need to do is just take a look at improving the tones of the rest of the image. So if we just scroll up to the top of the layers palette, we'll just click on the top layer 3, then down to our new adjustment layers and down to levels. And what we want to do is just to, first of all, increase the overall contrast. So we're going to take our shadow slider just up to 5, and we're going to reduce our highlight slider just sort of meet the edge of the histogram here to about 225. And now we can flatten all of those layers down into one. So if I just go up to our layer options, I'm just going to go flatten image, and now we just have our background layer. Now we just want to take a look at the overall colour. So if we click on our adjustment layers, down to hue saturation, and we're just going to increase the saturation a touch, so just up to +5. And then we want to just bring out some of the warmth from the rock and some of the foreground colour. So if we click on our edit menu here, just going to go down to reds, and we're going to boost the red saturation right the way up to 50. If I just click that off and on, and you can just see how it's added that warmth to the rock, especially in the foreground, and also to some of the grass in the foreground as well. Now I just go Control E, and that'll flatten that adjustment layer down onto our background layer. We're now ready to do a little bit of dodge and burn. So the first thing we're going to do is a little bit of burning. So if we select the burn tool, just down here at the bottom, then we want to make sure that we've got our shadows selected, and we're going to reduce our exposure right down to 5%. And the idea is just to really slowly build up our effect. We're also going to increase our brush size right up to about 700. And then just use the burn tool over the rock just to add just a little bit more contrast to the detail in the foreground rock. Not too much. Once I'm happy with that, I'm going to swap the brush over just to the dodge tool. Again, I want quite a large brush, about 700. I'm going to this time select highlights, and I'm going to keep my exposure at 5%. And I just want to bring out a little bit of the highlights again, some of the rock detail, and also in a little bit of the grass as well. Okay, I'm quite happy with that. So now normally you'd leave sharpening to the very last stage, but I want to apply a vignette as the last step. And before I do that, I'll do sharpening. Otherwise, sharpening will probably introduce a little bit too much noise into the sky because of the flat tones. So I'm going to just apply some sharpening to my image. But before I do that, I just want to zoom in to 100%. Now, although you've got the preview that will appear as well within Adjust Sharpness, it's always good just to see the effect sort of in the background on the original image. So if we go up to Enhance, down to Adjust Sharpness, and there we see the preview at 100%, and in the background we can also see our image as well. So here I've got a value of 60 and radius of 1.2. It's always good to start off at about 100 and 1.5. And as you can see, you've got sort of that painterly daubed look of over sharpening. If I just click on there and release, see before and after. So we know that our values there are far too high at the moment. Now, the first thing I want to do is just reduce the radius just to see the effect that that has. And as you see, so go down to about 0.5. We're starting to get the type of sharpening we want, but a lot of the detail of the rock is still being lost. So I know that I now have to reduce the sharpening amount. As I reduce that and have a look at the before and after, we'll find that about 50 is just about right. We've got a nice even balance between sharpening and the original image. Once we're happy with the effect of sharpening, just make sure you've got more refined clicked and just click OK to apply that. Now I'll go Control 0 just to zoom back out of the image, and we'll now take a look at adding our vignette. So we're now ready to add our vignette, and what this will do is a sort of a creative effect, but it'll also just add to the tone of the sky and get a more natural end result. So if we go up to Filter, down to Correct Camera Distortion, just click the Show Grid button down at the bottom to switch it off, and I'm just going to reduce our vignette down to about -30. And as you can see, it's just darkened up the edges of the sky, and that just gives it a much more natural look. If I just click Preview off and on again, and you just see how well that works for this image. So I'll click OK to apply the vignette to our picture, and then finally I'll just flatten the image just to finish off.